Cryptids. These are creatures or beings whose existence isn't backed by mainstream science, but original folklore, myth, and anecdotal stories. Think of well-known figures like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, alongside lesser-known entities like the Chupacabra or Macaulay Mbembe. Each one of these creatures adds to the mural of mystery that surrounds us. Cryptids captivate us by bridging reality and the unknown. The study of these creatures, called cryptozoology, merges biology, anthropology, and mythology, drawing enthusiasts and researchers alike. Culturally, cryptid stories explain natural phenomena and evoke wonder or fear. While skeptics see sightings as misidentifications or hoaxes, believers hold that undiscovered species may still exist. In a world focused on scientific rationalism, cryptids spark our imagination, inviting us to ponder nature's hidden mysteries. My mission is to find these creatures. All my findings will be recovered in this book, Cryptid Peace Theory. If you are listening to this, that means that I have decided to release my discoveries to the world.
In Ohio folklore, the Loveland Frogman, also known as the Loveland Frog or the Loveland Lizard, is a legendary humanoid frog described as standing roughly 4 feet tall, allegedly spotted in Loveland, Ohio. According to various legends, the creature was first sighted by the traveling salesman driving along an unnamed road late at night in 1955, with some versions of the story specifying the month of May. In one story, the driver was heading out of the Branch Hill neighborhood when he spotted 3 figures stood erect on their hind legs along the side of the road, each 3 to 4 feet in height, with leathery skin and frog faces. In other versions of the story, the creatures were spotted under or over a poorly lit bridge, and one held a wand over its head that fired a spray of sparks. In 1972, the Loveland Frogman legend gained renewed attention when a Loveland police officer reported to a colleague that he had seen an animal consistent with the descriptions of the frogman. After a reported sighting in 2016, the second officer called a news station to report that he had shot and killed the same creature some weeks after the 1972 incident, and had identified it as a large iguana that was missing its tail. University of Cincinnati folklore professor Edgar Slotkin compared the Loveland Frogman to Paul Bunyan, saying that stories about it have been passed down for several decades, and the sightings reports seem to come in predictable cycles. The Loveland Police reports. On March 3, 1972, at 1 a.m., Loveland police officer Ray Shockey was driving on a riverside drive near the Totes Boot Factory and the Little Miami River when an unidentified animal scurried across the road in front of his vehicle. The animal was fully illuminated in his vehicle headlights, and he described it as 3 to 4 feet long and about 50 to 75 pounds or 25 to 35 kilograms, with greenish leathery skin. He reported spotting the animal crouched like a frog before it momentarily stood erect to climb over the guardrail and back down towards the river. 2 weeks after the incident, a second Loveland police officer, Mark Matthews, reported seeing an unidentified animal skirted along the road in the same vicinity as Shockey's sighting. Matthews shot the animal, recovered the body, and put it in his trunk to show Officer Shockey. According to Matthews, it was a large iguana, about 3 feet long, and he didn't immediately recognize it because it was missing its tail. Before you dive into the story ahead, it's important to know that everything you are about to observe is purely fiction, created for your entertainment. Enjoy the journey. Like my father before me, I have a deep fascination with creatures that are widely believed not to exist. When I embarked on my first quest to find one, I was still young and inexperienced, so I chose a creature that, if truly exists, wouldn't pose much of a threat and wouldn't require me to travel too far. On May 20th, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I stood on the banks of the Little Miami River. Armed with only a notebook, a flashlight, and my camera, I was determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious creature. I had read every written document of accounts or sightings of the creature, each more fantastical than the last, but I knew I needed to experience it for myself. The first night passed uneventfully. I set up my gear near the spot where Officer Shockey reported his sighting. Listening to the rustling of leaves and distant croaks of frogs, I spent hours walking through the area, taking notes and sketching the landscape, mentally preparing for what might come next. The air was thick with anticipation, but my only company was the chorus of crickets and the gentle murmur of the river. After 2 nights without a sighting, I decided to broaden my search. I explored the wooded areas surrounding the river, carefully noting any unusual sounds or movements. Each day was a mix of excitement and frustration. I encountered the usual wildlife, deer, raccoons, and an array of frogs, but nothing that matched the legendary descriptions. On the 3rd day, I returned to the riverbank. I settled in, keeping my flashlight aimed towards the water. Hours passed in silence, and just as I was beginning to feel the weight of exhaustion, a movement caught my eye. There near the water's edge, I saw a figure. My heart raced as I squinted into the darkness. The creature was low to the ground, the greenish skin shimmering in the moonlight. I grabbed my camera, heart pounding, and took a deep breath before slowly inching closer. As I approached, I realized the creature wasn't standing upright, but rather crouched in its hind legs. It had the proportions of a large frog, its forelimbs underdeveloped, making them nearly useless. This forced it to walk upright, an awkward yet fascinating sight. I felt the rush of excitement. This was it, the frogman. For the next few days, I made this location my base, returning each night in hopes of seeing the creature again. Each dawn, I reviewed my notes, eager to capture more details of its behavior. On the 5th night, my patience paid off. As I lay quietly in my tent, I heard the unmistakable sound of a croak nearby. Slowly I emerged, heart racing with anticipation. The creature was back, this time closer to my camp. I crouched low, trying to remain as quiet as possible. The large frog moved awkwardly along the riverbank, its glossy skin glistening under the moonlight. I could see distinct markings across its body, each unique pattern almost like a fingerprint. As I observed it, I noticed that it appeared somewhat frail, its movements clumsy and unsteady. Over the next few days, I continued to watch the frog and its surroundings. I discovered what I believed to be the rest of its species. These frogs moved with more grace, their forelimbs functioning well, and while these frogs weren't as large as the bipedal one, they were still much bigger than any frog species known to science. It dawned on me that the frogman was a part of a small, isolated population. Their unusual characteristics seemed to stem from inbreeding, a consequence of dwindling numbers, and the lack of genetic diversity. It seems that while most of these creatures weren't affected by the genetic abnormalities of inbreeding, a small number was. It's highly likely that more of these bipedal frogs existed when they were still young, but most couldn't cope with the challenges of having only 2 usable limbs. This limitation probably allowed only a few to survive into adulthood. While this creature was often perceived as something straight out of the fairy tale, complete with its magic stick, the reality was much simpler. It was merely an animal facing the harsh challenges of survival. As I prepared to leave Loveland, I felt a mix of emotions. I understood the importance of raising awareness, but I also felt a deep sense of protectiveness over these creatures. I didn't want others to exploit their story or disturb their fragile habitat. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, and the truth of the Loveland Frogman was one I felt compelled to keep to myself. The Loveland Frogman is an intriguing creature with distinct physical characteristics that set it apart from typical frogs. Here's a detailed description. Approximately 3 to 4 feet tall and standing upright, although most often seen in crouched position. The body is robust and somewhat elongated, resembling that of a large frog but adapted for a bipedal movement. The skin is dull greenish hue, with variations ranging from deep olive to lighter lime shades, allowing it to blend into its natural habitat. The skin appears leathery and slightly shiny, typical of amphibians, and may have a coarse texture with small bumps or ridges, particularly along the back. Unique patterns and markings are present, including dark brownish-red stripes. The hind legs are strong and muscular, designed for carrying weight. They are proportionally much longer than its forelimbs, enabling it to propel itself effectively. The forelimbs are notably underdeveloped, appearing scrawny and weak, making them completely useless for locomotion. This results in creature relying completely on its hind legs to move. The head is broad and slightly flattened, tapering towards the snout. The overall appearance is distinctly amphibian, with a wide mouth that can open considerably. Large bulging eyes dominate the face, providing excellent night vision. The eyes are typically bright yellow or amber, adding to the creature's eerie appearance. The mouth is wide and filled with small, sharp teeth, suitable for grasping prey. When closed, it can create a surprisingly expressive look, contributing to the creature's mystique. The creature typically moves in a crouched position, but can stand upright on its hind legs. When walking, it exhibits an awkward gait, swaying as it moves, which makes it look extremely goofy and decently noticeable in its environment. The Loveland Frogman embodies a blend of familiar and the extraordinary. Its unusual size, awkward movement, and striking coloration create an unforgettable sight, stirring a mix of fascination and trepidation in those lucky enough to encounter it. My journey has just begun. With its early success, the adventurous spirit within me was at all-time high. I was determined to continue my search for the creatures similar to this one, creatures that shouldn't exist.
Thank you all for watching. Your support means the world to me, and will help improve the quality of future content. This is my first time creating something like this, and I'm excited to keep learning and growing with your feedback. A special thanks to Mezozoic for his incredible help in bringing this video to life.